What are boundaries? Boundaries refer to the physical, emotional, and mental limits that individuals set for themselves in order to maintain their sense of self and personal autonomy. These limits can include things like personal space, time, and privacy, as well as emotional and psychological boundaries. They are a crucial part of an individual's self-care and help to protect a person from being taken advantage of or feeling overwhelmed. Physical boundaries refer to the physical space that individuals need in order to feel safe and comfortable. This includes things like personal space, physical touch, and the right to say no to unwanted physical contact. For example, someone who is uncomfortable with being touched may set a boundary that they only want to be hugged by close friends and family. Emotional boundaries refer to the emotional space that individuals need in order to protect their own mental and emotional well-being. This includes things like the right to say no to unreasonable demands, the right to express emotions and opinions, and the right to have personal feelings and values. For example, someone who is feeling overwhelmed may set a boundary that they need time alone to process their feelings. Mental boundaries refer to the mental space that individuals need in order to maintain a clear and focused mind. This includes things like setting limits on the amount of time spent on social media or other distractions, and the right to have time to think and make decisions. For example, someone who is easily distracted may set a boundary that they will only check their phone during designated times of the day. Boundaries can be difficult to set and maintain, especially for those who have grown up in an environment where their boundaries were not respected. People who are not used to setting boundaries may feel guilty or selfish for doing so. However, it's important to remember that setting boundaries is not about being selfish or rude, but about taking care of oneself and protecting one's own well-being. It's also important to note that boundaries are not static and may change over time. For example, someone who is in a new relationship may need to set different boundaries than they did in a previous relationship. Additionally, boundaries can vary depending on the context. For example, someone may be comfortable discussing personal issues with a therapist, but not with a coworker. There are several strategies that can be used to set and maintain boundaries. One of the most important is clear and direct communication. This means being honest and clear about what one's boundaries are, and what will happen if they are not respected. It is also important to be able to say no and to be able to assert oneself without feeling guilty. Another important strategy is to be aware of one's own feelings and to be able to recognize when one's boundaries are being crossed. This means being able to identify one's own feelings of discomfort, anger, or resentment, and being able to take action to address them. It's also important to set boundaries with oneself. This means taking responsibility for one's own actions and decisions, and being able to set limits on one's own behavior in order to maintain one's own well-being. One of the most important things to remember is that boundaries are not just something that one sets for others, but also for oneself. This means taking responsibility for one's own actions and decisions, and being able to set limits on one's own behavior in order to maintain one's own well-being. In conclusion, boundaries are the physical, emotional, and mental limits that individuals set for themselves in order to maintain their sense of self and personal autonomy. They are an essential part of self-care and help to protect a person from being taken advantage of or feeling overwhelmed. Setting boundaries can be difficult, but with clear and direct communication, being aware of one's own feelings, and setting boundaries with oneself, it is possible to establish and maintain healthy boundaries. It is also important to remember that boundaries are not static and may change over time depending on the context. It is also important to remember that setting boundaries does not mean that one is being selfish or rude, but rather taking care of oneself and protecting one's own well-being. Additionally, having healthy boundaries can lead to better relationships with others as it allows for mutual respect and understanding. However, it's important to remember that setting boundaries can be challenging, especially when they are not respected by others. In these situations, it's important to remember that one's boundaries are valid and that it's important to stand up for oneself. It may also be helpful to seek support from friends, family, or a therapist to help navigate difficult situations. In short, boundaries are an essential aspect of self-care and relationships, and they play an important role in maintaining one's well-being and autonomy. By understanding the importance of boundaries, learning how to set and maintain them, and being willing to advocate for oneself, individuals can create healthier and more fulfilling relationships with themselves and others.